welcome. Now, fortunately for you, most of you have watched my sister's page, and she's done some wonderful things like Chinese dumplings. And one of her followers has asked, do you have a good recipe for bulgogi? So, yes, I do. What you will need is you will need some soy sauce, some rice wine vinegar, some sesame oil, your favorite soy sauce, and again, for those of you who are not familiar, you guys are familiar with my sister's work, Lanchi. Love this stuff. If you can't get it, call Tina. She'll knows where to get it. That's, I think, my last jar. Okay, so, anyways, for bulgogi, what we're going to do is we're going to make beef bulgogi today. Bulgogi is traditionally beef. It really means minced meat, basically. So, today we're using ribeye. Now, what you want to do with a ribeye is you want to make sure that it's marbled. That would be these fat marks in the center. This big chunky stuff, not exactly what you're looking for, but overall good marbling in the center is what you want. So this steak here would be perfect. This steak here, not so much. You see, there's not a whole lot of marbling there. But what we're going to do is we put these in the freezer for about 2 hours, give or take. And these are boneless ribeyes. What we want to do is we want to take and slice them as thin as humanly possible. But before we do that, garlic. For those of you who know, garlic comes whole like this. This is a Chinese cleaver. If you don't have one of these, a French knife will do. Press down on it like this, and that mushes down a little bit. And then we can chop this up into tiny little bits. We want to mince this almost as fine as we can get it. The smaller we get it, the more flavor there is. At this point, Tina would be looking at the camera and going, "You got it, Lauren? How we hold it up out there?" But I'm not like my sister. I'm kind of a no soup for you kind of guy.
Easton's asking where the whiskey is.
There is no whiskey in bulgogi. What you want to do is if you want to add some sort of alcohol to it, you can do this. Hold on 1 second. Traditionally, I don't have any soju, which is a Korean plum wine, but I do have shiru. Shiru is an Asian fermented spirit. It's kind of like green alcohol. Don't drink this stuff. Terrible for you. It will clean your teeth, though, and everything else on the way down. But what this will do is if you add a little bit of alcohol to the dish, it will add a little bit of a more pungent flavor to make it sharper. We don't really want that today. I want my bulgogi a little bit sweeter, so we're going to leave the shiru out. Now, traditionally it calls for Asian pear. I don't have any Asian pears. I don't even have apples. What I do have is ye old can of pears. Pears are just fine. Apples are just fine. What you want is a light, sweet fruit. I'm going to try to avoid things like overly sweet fruit, like peaches or oranges or things like that. Things with like a huge amount of real flavor to them. What we want to do is we want to mince this down to a little bit of a fine paste. Don't necessarily need all of them, but I want to make some marinade for a couple of things later on, so I'm just going to make all of it. Typically, you want about a half a piece of fruit per every pound of steak-ish that you're going to be making. I don't know what your family size looks like, so again, leftovers are always a good option. And of course, I don't have Saya here to make faces at the camera while I'm chopping or grinding or walking away from the camera, so we'll just have to deal without her for now. Now, the fastest way to actually get this minced down to, little tiny puree is, one, you could either buy applesauce, or you can run this through a hand blender. I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm just going to top it as fine as I possibly can. Throw it in my bowl with my garlic. Now, if you guys noticed, I did add 2 cloves of garlic. If you want a little bit more of a pungent, more savory sauce than a sweet sauce, more garlic is the way to go. You can always adjust later with garlic powder. Do not use garlic salt. Garlic salt will make the bulgogi super, super salty. We are already adding soy sauce and a couple of other things. Now, for all of you at home, and Tina's going to laugh at me for this one. I love you, Tina. Cheese grater. Unless you want to run this through a puree, which I don't recommend because washing the puree afterwards is a pain in the neck. You take the cheese grater, you take your onion, and then you cry. And you cry a lot. And you cry hard. The president, the COVID, it makes me cry. It makes me cry so bad. I, fortunately, have been working in this industry for a very long time, so I don't really cry with onions very much anymore.
Oh, you're making me cry.
Well, I make you cry. So my wife is behind the camera. Say hi to Corey, everybody. All right. So.
Good enough?
We take our 1/2 of a large onion, grate that down, making everybody in the room cry. Except me, because I'm a monster.
No, you're not.
All right. Once we get all that mixed up, what we want to do is we want to mix that down so that the garlic, the onion, and the pear have a chance to marinate a little bit. Now, hopefully you all noticed that I saved this aside. We're going to be using that later to adjust the flavor, making it a little bit more sweet as necessary. If you did not save it, that's fine. A little bit of corn syrup and some water. Just thin that out nicely. It goes a long way. Since, quite frankly, that's what they package canned fruit in anyways. Alright, so we're going to take our lovely steaks. And what you want to do is we want to cut off as much of this big fat as possible. So we're going to take our knife and just gently along the seams, open that up just a tad. Now, don't worry if you hack up a bunch of this and it just looks like it's got a lot of meat on it. Save this. I'll show you why here in a little bit. But what we're going to do is we're going to cut this down. A little bit of fat's okay. Again, fat equals flavor. Now, in ribeye, there is sometimes a little piece of gristle in here towards the front. Most of the time when you're barbecuing and things like that, it gets cooked down. It will not cook down in our bulgogi. So we're going to throw that out. Now, we're going to slice our meat as thin as humanly possible. Now, with good marbled meat, what it's going to do is it's going to start to shred on you already. That's what we want. We want it to shred. We want it to bunch up. We want it to not be nice, good cubes. So the meat will start to come apart like this, and that's exactly what we want. Now you notice I'm also going against the grain as opposed to with the grain. Again, I want the meat to shred so that when the fat comes apart and liquefies, the meat itself will start to shred and bunch up and become a twisted mass of, well, quite literally meat. Yeah, I know, Easton. Very creative. Ha ha.
Oh, he's just told me no hi to me and to say boo.
Boo?
Yes, he's told me boo.
Why is he telling you boo?
Because he's my little brother. What else do you expect him to do?
Now again, we're going to take these large pieces of fat off. Again, doesn't need to be perfect. For those who were never really good as kids staying inside the lines, that's fine. We don't need to worry about it. Just put that aside. And again, if you don't have a cleaver, a French knife works just fine. Just make sure you're shredding this as thin as possible. If you happen to be unlike myself and want one, and you have a deli slicer, go ahead, freeze the meat for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and then run it across your deli slicer. Make sure you're going against the grain. That part's the most important. Normally when you cut steaks, you're going to go with the grain. Again, with us, we're going against the grain. Rage on, my brothers. Against the grain.
Dude. You're being so weird.
I'm Gen X. We were born weird.
That's true.
All right. So, like I said, for about a pound of meat, you want, a good half a pear and everything else, but I want to make some extra marinade. So I'm going to make this super, super saucy. I'm going to cook the beef, and then I'm going to save the marinade. Typically, you could save half the marinade, put it in the freezer ahead of time, but since I'm going to be using it for the same set of beef, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw the beef into the pot when we get that far. Now, remember these scrap ends I was telling you about? These scrap ends are terrific. If you shred them lengthwise, as thin as you can, these become excellent bacon in the mornings. These hard fats will fry up nicely. The extra beef will actually make a nice texture to it, and you'll have the most awesome beef bacon ever. So we've got nice thin pieces, and that will fry up nicely in the fry pan tomorrow morning with some eggs. Now, if you've got bigger, thicker, harder pieces of fat, you can either throw them out, or you can put them on a low to medium heat, put a cover on them, and render them down, and pull the beef fat out. Beef fat will stay in the refrigerator for about 2 to 3 weeks before turning rancid. You can use that like any other butter, fat, lard, whatever you'd like. For me, I'm just going to toss it out. The other thing that you can do with these wonderful, wonderful, wonderful steaks are so nice and tender. If we go with the grain and we shred them super thin, we can make ourselves some stuff for cheesesteaks later.
Yum, yum, yum,
So,
yum, yum.
That's the next video. Cheesesteaks. All right, so now, you know as well as I do by watching my sister that she doesn't measure a damn thing. Well, neither do I. Chinese cooking. So what you want to do is you want about half a cup of the soy sauce. Now, remember, vinegar goes in pretty much everything that's Korean, including bulgogi. You wouldn't think so with how sweet it is. Now, we only want about 1/4 cup of this. Don't go nuts with it. Seriously. If you go overboard on the vinegar, there is no saving it. You might as well just make kimchi and move on with your life. Now, the sesame oil, what this does is it actually gives the flavor to the meat, and it actually gives it a little bit of an aromatic and depth to it. Realistically, I don't have any toasted coconut oil. You're going to want to use about 1/8 of a cup or maybe 3 or 4 tablespoons, depending on how oily you want your marinade. So when you mix this up, this is what our marinade is going to look like. And it should smell It should smell like a Chinese barbecue pit as you drive by or walk by. It should smell of soy. It should smell of the sesame. Now, I like a little bit of sharpness to my food, so I'm going to cheat a little bit. This is not in the traditional recipe. This is ginger. I only throw about a teaspoon in there, and what that'll do is that will bring out the flavor of the vinegar, and that will also enhance the soy a little bit. And then we take the meat and plop it in the bowl. Now, how many of you folks have a significant other that hates, can't deal with, or doesn't want spice? Raise your hands. Terrific. I can't see any of you, so that means nobody. Ignore the woman behind the camera. There is no woman behind the camera. Now, you do not want to make this lightning hot. This is not the goal. All right? So Lanchi, as my sister has probably instructed you, has a very nice depth of flavor to it. It's spicy, but it's not crazy off the charts spicy. You want to get one of your little dining spoons. You want to give it about, a decent scoop, about half a spoonful. Throw that into the meat just to give it a little bit of a kick. Again, for all you hotheads out there, add whatever spice you want to. You're just killing the rest of the flavors. We've used a lot of light flavors. We've used soy, we've used sesame, we've used pear. Overheating this is just going to make it terrible.
Yeah, your sister says that you need to divorce me now.
It's okay, I'm next in line.
No, you're not. I'm not divorcing him.
I'm still next in line.
All right, and for those of you who want to know what this looks like, this is going to have a nice red color to it, mostly from the Lanchi sauce, but it's going to look like, ye old chopped meat at the Chinese market or Asian market, and it's going to smell about the same. Now, we're going to let that marinate for about, you don't really need to let it marinate for very long. We've got a lot of powerful acids in there. We've got onions. We've got vinegar. We are just going to let it sit for about 10 minutes or so. And while we're doing that, we should wash our hands, clean up our boards, put all our stuff away, and most important part, make rice. For those of you who don't have a rice cooker, rice cookers are on sale at Walmart. We do not get paid royalties. I use them because they're cheap, they have everything, and it's a one-stop shop, and then I don't have to run all over town. By the way, I think my sister still has a wok she's trying to get rid of. You can cook rice in a wok.
Rice in a wok?
Look, I'm not going to have you hold the camera anymore. At least Saya just makes faces.
I can't make faces. I'm holding the camera. So I'm going to do weird color commentary because it's hilarious.
I'm surprised nobody mentioned walking the dog.
We don't have a dog. We have cats.
If we had a walk, we wouldn't have a dog either.
These are the jokes, folks. These are the jokes. That doesn't go in there.
That's a pantry item, dear. We'll leave the soy sauce and the Lanchi out for later.
So you can leave those things out for later, and that's terrific if you do. Like I said, we're making a little bit extra marinade here today, and I'll show you how to get that done. As you notice, this is looking a little dry. That's kind of the point. We don't want this super, 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 super moist yet. When it goes into the freezer, we'll make it moister. Yes, I said the word moister. Moister, as in more moist. I can see a lot of people cringing on the other side of the camera going, why is he using that word?
Okay, maybe you'll go viral or something.
As soon as you say that, though, it's like an instant boner killer for the internet.
Ah, that's true. Ignore me.
All right, so for our leftover steaks, we want to pack them flat in the bag. And the reason being is, this way, if you put them back in the freezer, they freeze nicely. They freeze evenly, and you want to make sure that they're sticking fat to fat so that when it freezes and then you pull them out of the freezer, you can just break them apart. I, however, am not going to throw these in the freezer. They're going directly in the fridge. So all of our bacon and our prepped meat for the next time we do this is going to go right there. Yes, for those of you who are quick enough to realize he didn't put that in the freezer, that means he's going to have a video on cheesesteaks in the next couple of days. You are absolutely right, folks. Just remember, meat will tenderize in the refrigerator as it progresses. You want to knock as much air out of the baggie as possible.
Okay, first of all, Tina, we're making bulgogi. Second of all, Bear says hi.
Hello. For those of you joining us late, joining us now, joining us forever, we are making bulgogi. It is a Korean chopped meat dish. It's kind of sweet and savory all at the same time. Goes on rice. It is delicious. All right, so we've got our meat marinated, and we've decided that we were going to marinate it for only about 10 minutes or so. Now, you can cook it in any sort of oil you like. You don't need a whole lot of it because it's already got oil in the marinade, and the steaks are high class with a good amount of marbling. However, just to get it started so that it doesn't stick to the bottom of the pan, put a teaspoon of sesame oil in the bottom of the pan. Give it a roll around, or you can use a paper towel or napkin, whichever comes first. And just give the bottom of a pan a little bit of a wick so it generates a glaze. This is just to make sure it doesn't stick on the bottom. You don't want it super, super oily. You don't want it greasy. You don't want it to look like an American hamburger. That is not the point. All right. Any questions up to this point while I'm waiting for the frying pan to heat up?
Nope. Steve says hi, though.
Hi, Steve! Which Steve? Blonde Aryan Steve or Mexican Steve?
Okay.
Have they both stolen girlfriends?
No, one stole his sister. The one that stole your sister.
Okay. Hi, Steve!
But that one also stole his girlfriend.
He'll never admit to that. All right. So, she's focused on the frying pan, not the food.
No, I'm focused on you.
Okay. So, this is our meat. It goes in the frying pan.
Now I'm focused on the frying pan. Meat in the frying pan.
Meat in the frying pan. Now, what you want to do is you want to put this in just as it starts to get a little bit, the oil starts to smoke. You want to call that smoke point hot.
Doesn't that vary depending on the oil?
It does vary depending on the oil. And the reason that is because certain oils are more dense than others. I'm using a very light oil, so that smoke point came along rather quickly. If you're using something like peanut oil, you could be standing here for a few minutes. Now, as you see, I didn't pick all the pears and stuff out of it. I wanted some of that in the pan. Now, our liquids. I'm going to add half back to the marinade. Now this marinade will become a glaze for barbecued steaks on the grill later. Always multi-purpose your sauces. If you're going to make a sauce from scratch, it's always best to make a lot of it and then multi-purpose it. So we have some New York strip steaks in the freezer. And this is going to go on top of the New York strip steaks on the grill.
Oh, right.
I stole this from my mom.
No, you didn't.
I stole one just like it from my mom. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we're stirring this a little bit intently. We don't want any one piece to burn. we also don't want it to become super, super, super dry. So, as it's going, we want to just add a little bit more liquids to it so that it continues to cook in its own juices. You want to alternate a couple of tablespoons of the whether you're using the pear juice or whatever came out of the can, or if you're using the water and
Corn syrup.
Corn syrup. You're also going to want to give it just a little bit of a dash of the soy. Don't go nuts with either of those things. You do not want to unbalance the meat. Now, a lot of people say, yes, we can eat rare steak. There's no reason why you should cook it all the way through. You are absolutely correct. There is no reason why I should cook it all the way through, except that I want to make sure that all of those hard fats that I kept alongside there break down. You don't want to be chewing on something and it become gummy in your mouth. That is not what we want. We want good, tender steak all the way through. We're going to cook it nice, well done. But because of the sauce and it's kind of steeping in its own juices, it's going to stay like this. It's not going to become tough. It's not going to become rubbery. Oh, medium rare is the way to go. Absolutely, when you're eating a steak.
Ew.
Sweetheart.
It's so overdone.
Sweetheart. Not everybody likes a rare steak like you and me.
Honey, I take my meat raw.
There are kids watching.
I do.
Well, it's true. Now, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you do not smell anything that's overly pungent, overly sour, or overly sweet. If you're smelling any of those things without it being a good mix of all three, you've overcompensated for something. To fix this, if it smells overly sweet, you're going to want to add more of your more pungent ingredients. That also includes adjusting with garlic powder. Again, we love Walmart. We really don't love Walmart. We just go there. If you smell that it is overly pungent, adjust with a little bit of sweetness. If it is overly sour smelling, you've added entirely too much vinegar. There is no save. Eat your mistakes. Cry lots.
Feel better.
You'll do it again next time. But there is no save for over-putting vinegar.
The rice is done.
And it'll stay done.
Alrighty.
Not
We're
that fast.
just about done here. Now you'll notice that the sauce is starting to cook down and thicken on its own. This is absolutely what we want. We want that sauce to be a little bit thicker. And this way it adheres and sticks nicely to the rice.
Unplug it. Thank you.
All right.
No, there's no off switch for that thing. It's cheap. From Walmart. Actually, it wasn't from Walmart, but.
All right, for those of you who've watched my sister, you know what this is. This is a rice paddle. Rice paddles are important. Rice bowls nowadays are stainless or non-stick. Do not stick anything metal in a non-stick pan. All right, so we've got ourselves some rice, a little bit of bulgogi, a little bit of the sauce. Now, I love a little bit of decoration of my food. Tina will tell you this, that I fold everything into nice, neat little swans. Well, here's to you, Tina. A little bit of sesame seeds on top.
Yum.
And now, proof that this is good, let me have the camera. All right. Try it.
Oh, darn it. You're going to make me do it. Okay. Yeah. The woman who can't eat beef.
See? That's what you're looking for. You're looking for that face. When you get that face, you know you've done it right. There you go, guys. I hope that all of you watching, Tina, go ahead and repost this. You're more than welcome to for all of your friends who didn't manage to join us this evening. Eileen, you're welcome. Also, you can do this with chicken, or you can do it with pork, or you can do it with any ground meat or any sliced meat you really want to. Chopped meat at the grocery store works fine. Flat meat, whatever you like. And just remember, the difference in Korea, if you ever go there between bulgogi and kilgogi, is that bulgogi is beef, kilgogi is dog. Do not ever confuse the two. Thank you. This is Chef Tony signing off.